Hey everybody, it is November 21st, 2025 here with your after hours recap. So let's just talk about what happened really quick. The most notable move I thought in the market were kind of two things. Today it was the ITB home builders, absolutely fantastic. At one point up 5.5% is what I believe they were. They did kind of reject right at the end of the day the 200 simple moving average. So just one day at a time, but the home builders definitely some positive price action. Recently, it has not been so great. You had this really nice uptrend on the way up and obviously gave most of that move back. And then today, obviously a really nice move up going into the weekend, but ultimately was not able to close above the 200 simple moving average. So really not much to write home about as it relates to home builders, other than it was a nice day. The PPH, which is pharmaceuticals, beautiful day, broke out of this little bull flag, new all-time, or I believe this is new, all-time closing highs. So really, really nice as it relates to that. The XBI as well, this is a new closing high, continues to be fantastic action, just surfing the 20 and the 10 simple moving average, just amazing. And the XLV, which is your healthcare ETF, just continues to be awesome as well. Really nice bull flag, just like your PPH for pharmaceuticals, and continuing higher. Everything else, the other notable thing that I will say was the IWM, the Russell. I mean, at one point it was up 3% on the day, had gotten back most of yesterday's drop. Really, really fantastic. But again, below the 50 simple moving average, a little bit choppy. This doesn't necessarily feel like the environment where awesome swing trades are born, right? We got to get back above the 50. We got to reestablish ourselves in an uptrend, and we just are not there at the moment. Yes, did you get some bounces in IWM? Did you get some bounces in the QQQ? I think that's fine. But we finished up 0.75%. You pushed nicely, but then you closed a little bit on the weaker end. Not much to think about there, really, when you consider how big of a distribution day it was yesterday. Yes, did we reclaim 1010's lows? We sure did. But again, you have to ask yourself, what setups do you have here that are buyable? Not a whole lot. And then really as it relates to the cryptos, down some more. I know, again, there was a little bit of buyers here. You had this really big pickup in volume, but ultimately there is not a whole lot. Let me see if I could squeeze this in a little bit better. There we go. Not a ton in terms of buyers. Really that gave it any kind of continuation. Did not go green like your S&P 500, like your NASDAQ. So again, not a ton to talk about. Really, really nice strength and continued strength in Google. This one continues to be one of your leaders. Apple is another one that also continues to be one of your leaders. Anything else? Lilly, obviously we know all about Lilly at this point. This one continues to be, I think, the leader. Johnson & Johnson, again, another one, continues to act really, really well within that healthcare space. So healthcare, pharmaceuticals, biotechs, those are your leading groups right now. Energy and gold, hanging on for dear life. I did have some XOM yesterday, and it was, I'm going to just talk about it at first because I did end up cutting this one. I saw this flush out in the morning. My stop was the lows of 11.19, but I gave it a little bit of wiggle room and it started to push. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to continue to kind of use, that 1590 level, and that's where I'm going to cut it. And then all of a sudden this thing starts to flush back out, and I'm just like, I didn't even wait for it to take out its intraday lows. I cut it, and then of course it just turns around from there. That's the reality. So I ended up eating a small loss. It wasn't anything major. It was already just a 5% position to begin with, and XOM is a super slow mover already. So really, really no harm. I was kind of looking for it to break out of this $120 base when you look at the weekly, and I'll have plenty of opportunity to get re-involved in XOM if it's going to be acting well. But of course, crude oil is not being the most friendly. And so some of these names, as I've stated before, the best place to buy them is against descending moving averages. Of course, I got stopped out at the lows. hindsight's 2020. It is what it is. I'm not too mad about that at all. Otherwise, I didn't do too much today. Cypher, I just held on to it. I don't think it's doing anything wrong. If you're a short seller, you just kind of got to sit there. Iron, I did go ahead and cover a third of my position. I really like how this thing washed out. It actually has an unfilled gap right about this $40 level all the way down to about 38.5. We got right into that unfilled gap, and then we started to rally from there. So I did just cover some off, and then we started to just kind of consolidate for the rest of the day. Will I regret some of those covers? Maybe, maybe not. Yes, I probably could have covered them a little bit better. Instead, I covered them about $2 higher, but I am in at about 52.5. So ultimately, we're still up about $10 a share on the other 2/3 of my position. Oklo did absolutely nothing with this thing. Although I probably could have just exited the entire thing today, right where this name broke out from. And then we kind of started to rally, but ultimately, I'm just going to let it work as long as we're kind of living under the 10-day and then ideally the 20-day over the next handful of days. I will just kind of let that 20-day work for me. It's a very small position, so nothing, to really be worried about. SNDK, I covered some yesterday at $195. This thing did wash out an extra $10. I did not cover any more. I was kind of thinking, maybe over the coming days we can get down to the 50-day where I would probably be done with the position. And again, SNDK has a bit of an unfilled gap down at 175. So, if we were to get down to 175 all the way to 165-ish, I would be happy to just kind of kill the position. I'm in at 260. I'm not trying to nail the high on this thing, but today it really didn't do too much. I had some really nice covers, 195 and change yesterday, so there's not a whole lot left for me to do as it relates to that one. And Netflix just closes on the lows. This, in my opinion, even when the market was bouncing, was showing absolutely no strength. God, I wish I had a few more. I'm fairly confident that this is the start of a stage 4 downtrend for Netflix. And so for me, it's just be patient there. Don't plan on covering any. This isn't like a 3 to 5 day kind of thing where I then want to take some off. This is just a trail kind of situation where I'm almost just waiting for this thing to go all the way down to $80 or potentially lower. But that's kind of what this feels like. We're going to probably, in my opinion, could go revisit those April lows. Does it happen? Does it not? I don't know, but I'm willing to give back my gains to potentially find out, and I'll just be trailing it. So as long as, the 20-day, which is effectively at my average, we can start to find some resistance there. Any pushes into that kind of level, any pushes into the 50-day, if this starts to come down a little bit lower, I would be looking to add and ultimately just kind of fade this one a whole heck of a lot lower. This was a late stage base. This was a leader that lasted for a while. You effectively bottomed in like the hundreds of bucks and you went all the way to 1,300. And, I would suspect that this one undergoes a fairly large correction through a stage 4, downtrend. So we'll find out kind of how that plays out. But ultimately, that's how I saw the market. Like I said, there were some nice bounces, but nothing to write home about. I didn't think like NVIDIA was that amazing. Yes, there was some pretty big capitulation volume coming into this thing. There was a pretty big pickup in volume today. This like 180 level where you used to have prior resistance turned into potential support. We don't know if that's going to end up playing out like that, but the reality is NVIDIA could very well be a late stage base. Doesn't necessarily mean I'm looking to short this one, but even a Palantir, again, feels a little bit like a late stage base that is potentially breaking down. Cryptos are breaking down. Speculative names have really gotten hit. Biotechs, healthcare, pharmaceuticals, that's what's been leading. So that's just kind of my thinking for now. And I really didn't do too much in the market today. I had a long on yesterday that stopped me out. That's just kind of the reality of the environment. And we just continue to take it one day at a time. Little bit of cover in Cypher, little bit of a cover yesterday in SNDK. Make sure you're paying yourself into some of these big exaggerated moves down. Remember, on the short side, it's a game of diminishing returns, right? You get these 20, 30, 40, 50% down moves. There's not a whole heck of a lot of meat left on the bone. So just make sure that you're paying yourself into that. And that's just kind of my thinking for the time being. We will wait for either a big capitulation on the market, which I don't think we've gotten that yet. And on a big capitulation on the market, I would be thinking maybe we have a tradable bounce, not the start of a beautiful swing market, or we wait for a follow-through day, which if today was the low, then on like something like Wednesday, I would be expecting like a 1% up day and a pickup in volume over Tuesday's high, something like that. And I would also need to go into that day with multiple buyable setups. If that were to happen, then I think, maybe we could have a renewed rally, but I don't see a lot of clean charts out there. I see a lot of stocks breaking below their key moving averages. Financials held on today, hardly. Again, home builders, but still below the 200-day. So some of the biggest rallies are in things that, are kind of breaking and hanging out below the 200 simple moving average. That's not the best look, right? Even the Russell, I would suspect it's because of the home builders and some of the financials today. But yeah, there isn't anything really exciting going on in the market that you're like missing anything. If you're a day trader, volatility is cool. It's fine. If you're a swing trader, this isn't necessarily the market to get heavily engaged. The time to short was several weeks ago. The time to possibly short would be a rally into declining moving averages, but it's a little too late for fresh shorts, and it's a little too early for a bunch of new longs. You should just be patient, let things kind of come to you. If you've been focused on healthcare, if you've been focused on Johnson & Johnson and Lilly and TMO and Intuitive Surgical and, Amgen and all of these biotechs, fine, congratulations. That's definitely been the place to be. If that hasn't been your thing, and I know trading some super slow names isn't normally within my wheelhouse, although they've been really, really good, it's just been kind of a hands-off situation for me for the time being. So hopefully, again, you guys are staying safe. Hopefully you guys are trading well, and I will see you guys bright and early on Monday morning. Cheers.